Hello and welcome to the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Thanks for joining us for Talking Europe on France 24. I'm Luke Brown. Now, it's been a busy few weeks in European domestic politics. In Brussels, there were sighs of relief following the defeat of Viktor Orban in Hungary's elections. Peter Magyar putting a resounding end to 16 years of power for Orban. But that was just followed a few days later by the election of Rumen Radev in Bulgaria, who is aligned with Russia on key issues such as Ukraine. This in the country's 8th election in 5 years. Now, to discuss what that all means for the EU, I'm joined today, and I'm delighted to be joined today by 3 MPs. First, Katarina Rot-Nevedelova, a non-attached MEP from Slovakia. Then, from Bulgaria, Christian Vigenin, an S&D MEP from Bulgaria, and Daniel Freund, a Green MEP from Germany. Let's start with the most recent news. Thank you, of course, for being with us today. Let's start with the most recent news, and that was in Bulgaria. Mr. Vigenin, what can we expect from Rumen Radev? Will he be such an obstacle for the European institutions as Orban was, who he, of course, became very famous for using his veto at the EU Council?
I think that somehow the elections in Bulgaria were overshadowed by those in Hungary, and naturally journalists and people started to compare Orban with Radev or Magyar with Radev. I think the situation is very, very different, including with regard to the personality. I believe that, as you said, Radev has a slightly different approach with regard to Russia and Ukraine, but I don't think that he's going to be an obstacle or will veto decisions in the European Council or the Council of the European Union. I believe that he will try to express a more reserved opinion. He will try to, as he said, that he will try to have a more critical thinking and see what else can we do in order to solve this wound in Europe, to bring lasting peace in Europe. Obviously, what the European Union has done so far did not lead us to the result we wanted, and maybe we'll have some critical remarks. But generally, he was president for 9 years. He's not an unknown value, and I don't think that Bulgaria can somehow take the place of the former Hungary on these issues, no.
But he had a very strongly Eurosceptic line on many issues, of course. I mean, is that not going to prevent him from being able to be productive in Brussels?
I don't think so, because yes, he will have a more critical approach to a number of issues, but at the end, we may say that sometimes it's good if someone has a different voice or different thinking. The point is to reach the best solutions for Europe and for the European citizens. But I know that we are still, trying to link the election campaign with the real policies. The parliament, the new Bulgarian parliament, will convene this week. Next week we have the new government, and I would say that we need to judge the new government according to the policies and the results, and not what people may expect from him. What is important, however, is that Bulgaria will be back as a strong player on the European field, because, as you mentioned, for 5 years we had 8 parliamentary elections, no government lasted for more than a year in this period. Now we'll have stability and possibility to really follow more strategic policies in the country, including to be a more reliable partner at European level. That's my expectation.
Okay. Staying on the topic of Eurosceptic figures in Europe, we'll move to Slovakia. MEP Rot-Nevedelova, Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico seems to have lost one ally to gain another, if you simplify things to a certain extent. What's the sentiment in Bratislava? Is Mr. Fico feeling a bit more isolated now, or can he continue with this Eurosceptic line?
There is no reason why to feel isolated in Europe. I don't feel that we should have this feeling in Slovakia in general. I don't know if you're referring to Bulgarian new prime minister or if you're referring to the new prime minister in Hungary, because they both seems to be the ones who can continue in kind of critical discussion with the European Union, which is very important for us. And despite the fact that some of the colleagues also I read some statements and I saw the media positions, but still, I believe that also the new Hungarian Prime Minister will be, we shouldn't be very much surprised that it will be very much continuing in the in some of the rhetorics or some of the activities which Viktor Orbán did for the Hungary, because also Peter Magyar seems to be and looks like a very nationalist politician and the person who will be fighting for his own country. So we believe that the Europe is changing. We also see the result in Bulgaria, which is coming in a very positive direction towards this. Also, we see some changes in Poland and in other countries. So we believe that Europe will wake up finally from this very ultra-liberal positive attitude towards some things, and we will be more realistic and more pragmatic.
Okay, well, we'll move to Hungary, if that's okay. We'll cross over to Daniel Freund from the Green Party. Peter Magyar, the newly elected but not yet sworn-in Prime Minister, is set to meet this week with Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission chief. Expectations are very high in Brussels that he will be a very different prospect to Orbán. He does also, of course, come from Fidesz originally, from the same party as Orbán, although he's, of course, got his own party now. What are your new hopes for Peter Magyar?
Well, I think, I mean, the symbolism, and I was there on election night, seeing tens of thousands of people celebrating in the street the end of 16 years of Orbán rule. It feels a bit like, and you know, that the new Prime Minister will be elected on the 9th of May. It really feels like Hungary is rejoining the European Union. And I think we already see that the relationship with the incoming Prime Minister is vastly different than what we have seen from Viktor Orbán over the past few years. He was the vetoer-in-chief, and he has used the veto more than every other government combined. And now, already following the election, we finally approved the 90 billion support for Ukraine. And I think the relationship with the new Magyar government will be a very different one. The expectation and the hope is that he will restore the rule of law, restore democracy in Hungary, and most importantly, stop the vast corruption that Orbán has brought about the country.
But speaking about the Hungarian election result, it was in part perhaps due to the pressure from the European Union, which had blocked billions of euros in funds for Hungary. Is there a lesson there for the future about how the EU can leverage that as pressure on other EU countries? I mean, perhaps Slovakia, perhaps other countries. I mean, I don't want to point any out specifically, but is there a lesson there for European institutions?
I would clearly say that, freezing EU funds for those countries that don't respect the values, that attack the rule of law, and where EU funds are being stolen, we have in the past done this for two countries. In both countries, we have seen changes of government following the freezing of funds, both in Poland and now in Hungary. And I think that, this shows that when the EU wants to fight against being robbed and rules being ignored, it can do that. And I myself, I've put a motion to the Parliament. It was voted, where the Parliament has now asked that a rule of law procedure be launched in the case of Slovakia, because we have seen that under Fico, the special prosecution on anti-corruption has been dismantled, the National Crime Agency has been dismantled, the penal codes on corruption offences has been changed, and dozens, if not hundreds, of people that have been convicted for corruption offences have walked free. So EU funds are also now in danger in Slovakia, and I would hope we wouldn't have to do this, but the EU can protect its money, it can protect its values and its laws, and we've seen in Poland and Hungary that it can work.
Okay, MEP Rod Nevedelova, would you like to respond to that?
It's really embarrassing what the colleague is saying. Yes, you are fighting against Slovakia because in Hungary there was a change in the government, so now you have a new enemy, which is Robert Fico. This is really embarrassing. Dear Mr. Freund, I know that you are known in the parliament for this, but this is really like your statement saying that we don't have a patience, no more patience in Slovakia, and when we stop the funds, we are changing the government. You are basically saying that if you don't like the government in some member state, the European Union should stop the funding, and then we are changing the government to the one which you like. This is not something which is really a democracy in the European Union. And you are just accusing us of the things which are really stupid, because you said that there are thousands of people who are not accused of corruption because of the changes in the law. This is really ridiculous. It's really, I don't know where you got this number. This is really, really crazy what you are saying. It's embarrassing, and you should stop doing that because you know nothing about Slovakia. You were once there. You met the people who are fighting against Slovakia government, against our party for ages. They are paid non-government organizations from different money from outside, and they are there to change the political landscape in Slovakia, and you are the part of it, and you are taking this here and saying that Slovakia is doing the things. Today you proposed the amendments, and there was the voting in your report about the European Commission. about the discharge of European Commission,
Yes.
where you put the things about Slovakia which are not true, like that we stop some kind of institutions which is not, it was reversed, it was changed, and there are still things which are not true clearly. And you are still doing this because you need a new enemy on you. Your new enemy, your personal new enemy is Mr. Fico, which is really ridiculous, and it's not going to change any landscape in Slovakia. You're not helping anybody, just the opposition, and this is really not how you should behave as a member of the European Parliament.
May I ask a very quick response there, and I would like to ask one more question to MEP
None of this is about politics. It's about corruption. It's about the rule of law. Peter Magyar is from a very different political party family than myself. Fico, the current opposition in Slovakia, is from a different party family. I have nothing, I have no interest in this. What I care about is EU taxpayer money and the rule of law being upheld in every member state. And if it's not being upheld in Slovakia, well then EU funds should not go to Slovakia as long as the rules are not respected.
Okay, and one final question, MEP Vigenin. We're talking a lot about the pressure from the EU. Do you think it is justified that the EU should be using EU funds in this way to leverage and influence domestic politics in EU countries? And perhaps Bulgaria could be a victim of that in future?
I don't expect to be victim because actually with the new government we expect that the situation with corruption with the fight against corruption will improve dramatically because for years political landscape was dominated by oligarchic forces which had also the political power. So from that point of view, Radev is rather something like Magyar in our case and not Orban. So I believe that EU taxpayers' money should be protected. We cannot use European money to feed corruption in the member states, but of course all that has to be very objective and not politically motivated. So from that point of view, I don't know all the details that you mentioned, but of course we have to be careful because we at the end should not punish European citizens, we should punish the elites who are corrupted, so it's very difficult balance to strike on that.
Okay. Christian Vigenin, Daniel Freund, Katarina Roth-Nedevelova, thank you so much for taking the time from your busy schedules to debate with us here at France 24. You are watching France 24. There will be more news and headlines after this short break. Do stay tuned.